With me now to discuss the unraveling of Egypt and the implications for the United States, two able and experienced hands. New York Congressman Anthony Weiner, a Democrat who characterized our recent move towards civility during the State of the Union by sitting next to our friend Republican Peter King, Mr. Weiner's sometimes bitter rival. As on the left, on the right, our own once and future candidate for the presidency of the United States, the former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee. Gentlemen, thank you. These are troubling times, Governor. Do you fear for our foreign policy in the Mideast because of what's happening in Egypt?
Well, very much, and I think it's a potential destabilizing factor. Egypt is one of the two bookends that surround Israel with stable partners and partners who have been good allies. The security of Israel is of great concern to me. In fact, I will be there all of this next week for the next 10 days for about my 15th time. I'm pretty sure that the tension along the Sinai is going to be significant. But the destabilization of Egypt has implications not just in the Middle East but across the globe. But it especially creates a very dangerous and precarious position for all of the Middle East, specifically Israel, against the threat that comes from Iran.
Did we bring it on ourselves, Congressman?
Destabilized, yes, but maybe not for the worse. Look, for years Mubarak has been unwell. It's been unclear who was going to follow him. It's perceived that his son was going to come next. We have, to some degree, been buying a problem for the longest time. You know, Egypt gets virtually dollar for dollar the same amount of aid that Israel gets ever since Camp David. With Israel, we basically guarantee their loans. With Egypt, military aid. Year after year after year, more and more military aid going to a country that, frankly, yes, they are a partner with Israel for peace, but problematic. You look at their press, more and more anti-Semitic all the time. Look at the average street in Cairo, it's a miserable place to live. I mean, this was a matter of time. The one surprise here, quasi-surprise, is this did not come from the Muslim Brotherhood. This came from the average rank-and-file person yearning to be free and be treated better. I don't believe that keeping a dictator in place who's oppressing their people ever works out in the best interest of the United States. And ultimately, if all of these Arab countries that are like pyramids on their point, if they all start to fall, it's not such a terrible thing. So long as people have their aspirations lived up to, these other issues will work themselves out, in my view.
Governor, the Congressman is right. It didn't start with the Muslim Brotherhood. It was a kind of a secular, spontaneous movement, perhaps related to Tunisia, almost undeniably related to what happened earlier in Tunisia. But the Muslim Brotherhood of professionals, they are deeply rooted. They've been kind of waiting their chance to get the heel of Mubarak's government off their necks. What happens now?
Well, the fact that there is a growing sense and hunger for freedom and democracy, that's a good thing. And it's almost like the Soviets when there was a taste for Beatles music and blue jeans. And once you have that, you can't get rid of it. The technology that enables people to understand what's going on in the rest of the world by way of the Internet has transformed. The question is, what comes into the vacuum? And that's the big issue that we don't know, and the one that we hopefully can find out if it's truly, as you say, Congressman, those folks sort of bubbling up from the bottom who just want a chance to get their trash picked up in decent streets, and Lord knows they need it in Cairo because it's a mess. That's one thing. If it turns out to be radical jihadists, God help us all.
What do you think?
Well, it's hard to tell what's going on. It's so remarkable. I mean, you can just imagine someone like the governor who knows the region so well. If you can even envision what's going on there, even a year ago, you would have been quite a seer to even know that this was going to happen. It does seem that what's going on the Arab street now is something that perhaps was a long time in coming. And that people say, you know what, we have these dictatorial rules, but our lives are just not very good, and we want them to be a little bit better. You look in all the strife with the Palestinians, what's going on in Ramallah with 15% growth because they're making the moderate steps to having a moderate regime. You know what? I frankly think that the lesson that we're learning here is that Ronald Reagan, it's hard to say this, but Ronald Reagan was right. You know, when people who are yearning to be free get a chance to do it, ultimately things work out well. Let me just say one final thing is, we have to remember that there's a lot of subtext going on here. You know, you've got what's going on in Lebanon, which is as much about Sunni-Shia strife as it is about anything else. So there's a lot of subtext going on, but the one thing I think that we always learn too late is when the United States just wraps its round around whatever dictator in the name of stability, we make a mistake. We should have higher aspirations.
Agreed?
I agree with that. Absolutely. We have to be careful. We've given $3 billion a year to Egypt. The congressman is right. It's primary military aid. And what we've done is we've thought that he's a dictator, but he's our dictator, so that's good for us. And it may not be that in the long term we have to deal with some really anti-American sentiment when, not if, but when the Mubarak government falls.
It's going to happen. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you.